Now then, this is just a bit of a kiln update. As you can see, we've got both sides of the roof on and some bits of board on the gables and an old tub that just sits over the chimney when we're not using it, just to stop water drizzling down there. And just, you might think, how on earth do we get to that? Well, that's a 12-foot piece of sort of 2x1 or something there, so you can just walk around the back, and the pot is tied to that piece of timber, so you just lift it off. Talk about rural. Anyway, we've been doing some modifications, so let's go and have a look. So one of the modifications, I wonder if we can see it. Yeah, there we are. I put a chimney damper in that piece of pipe there. It's just a sort of a rough circle welded to a shaft that goes through the pipe, and there's about 3/4 of an inch gap all the way round between the outside of that piece of steel circle and the inside of the pipe. It just reduces the flow. Anyway, I was and ahhing and thinking how to work this one out, and I screwed this bit of stick there to it, thinking, right, what we're going to do now, have a bracket with some holes in it and stuff like that, because when you set a chimney damper you want it to stay where it is. But I think let's just move the camera and you'll see. All you do is move the stick and it just sits on the ground, just like that. Simple, eh? Anyway, that was the first modification, and the reason for that was, as I say, to slow the gases down, because I had a feeling that we were getting all this heat and it was just rushing up the chimney, and that was a bit pointless. So we needed to keep some of this heat in the kiln itself. So I did a firing with some low fire glaze that was supposed to be 1000 degrees. Yeah, it worked at 1000 degrees. From Mako it was. Anyway, that was remarkably unsuccessful. And I remember people saying to me, when you're into ceramics, just remember, don't put any heart and soul into anything until it's actually completed, because it's a rocky road. There's loads of things that can go wrong, especially in the early stages when you're making it up and not quite sure what you're doing and haven't got the experience. So there you go. I did do a log of temperature and time. You know, it was a gradually climb up, but we just didn't, we were getting temperature but we weren't retaining it in the kiln, I think. So there you go. And because of that, we were getting a huge variation in temperature within the kiln itself. So a mate of mine from up in the hills sourced me a couple of broken kiln shelves. Wow, treasure. Yeah. So what we've done now is we've modified the kiln in so much as we've modified the way the gases move around, and also, let me just see if I can see where I'm, oh, that dark one there, there we are. I've made a port in the side there for the pyrometer. Now last time the pyrometer was acting up and it was sort of going to naught and then to like 2000 and then back down to, so there was something wrong, but I've cleaned all the connections up, the connections between the wire and the actual pyrometer head, and I've taken the pyrometer head connections apart, cleaned all those up, put it all back together, and at the moment it seems to be stable, which is great. Yeah. That makes a difference. So we've got a pyrometer port, and if you can see, I've got a few bits of lining material there. So let's just go and have a look at this. So we've got a bit of charcoal here. So what we had previously was, can we see that? We can. The kiln like that, and the chimney like that, and the top, and the firebox like that. Okay. And some shelves in there, and the heat was coming from there through them and up there. Well, I had a discussion with a friend of mine, and we sort of thought that, okay, we put a dwarf wall there, yeah, about 4 inches away, but not all the way up. And what I've done is these kiln shelves, I've put a kiln shelf there and blocked up that there. Okay, so there's a gap, so your gas has come along and up. Then from the top of that dwarf wall I've put a kiln shelf there, and of course these shelves are you can lift them out. So effectively what we've got now is we come along here and up, then we can have ceramics there, and the gas has come along, and then we can have more ceramics here, and the gas has come along and then down to there. So we've got a longer path. Hopefully that will work. And we've got the pyrometer port is there. So what I was proposing to do is be able to take the pyrometer out when we're getting up to about 1000 degrees, but have inside, but within view through that port, I've got hold of a couple of 04 cones, and I'll show you those in a minute. Yeah, and of course the cones are a way of actually, something I didn't realise, but you know, you've got a pyrometer, tells you the temperature of the air in the kiln, and an infrared gun can tell you the temperature of a bit of ceramic, that particular little bit, that surface temperature. But a cone, when it melts and bends, tells you that at that point in the kiln, yeah, there's been enough heat to be absorbed into that cone so it will melt. So it's yet another way of monitoring things, but that's sort of a physical and a practical application. And of course this is why people use cones, because it's not so much the surface temperature, it's the actuality. Right, rant over with that. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So along there, up there, along there, up there, along there, down there and up there. And then we've got the chimney damper here. And the chimney continues up. Where's that other bit of charcoal? There we go. And these are the cones. about that high. Yeah, and they're designed to be at an angle, and you just bed them in a piece of clay, and I think we might be able to see. .04 it says there. Well, .04 is 1000 degrees or 1020. Just depends who manufactures them, which is typical. You know, they're not all exactly the same. So an .04 from one manufacturer is 20 or 30 degrees different from another, which is absolutely mindless as far as I can see. But there you go. It's like phone chargers, isn't it? Etc, etc, etc. So we shall be putting those in the kiln and monitoring the temperature with them, along with the pyrometer. Right, so let's have a look in this here kiln. Okay, this is about the best camera angle I can get. So let me lift this out. We need a stick to point things out. Perhaps we can we lift this one out? We can. There, grand. So there's the top of that dwarf wall, and I've built up another internal wall with these storage heater bricks. So there's some below this kiln shelf here, yeah, and then some more there. That takes the next layer of kiln shelves, and I've put some odd bits, and that is a homemade fire brick made of I think 20% sand and a load of sawdust with clay, and then mixed really well and then fired, and of course the sawdust burns out to leave all those little holes. So I think we're there, and of course this bit here is another bit of fire brick. There we go. That's a bit of fire brick that just blocks up the hole through to the firebox, just because it was just slightly in the wrong place, and I could do a major rebuild, but this is an experiment. So there's about 1.5 inch gap behind there that goes to the firebox, so we've got this that has been clayed in place. Oh, hopefully that will all be all right. And you know, these kiln shelves are an absolute godsend. They're absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I mean, broken and really manky, but that's besides the point. As you can see, I've made up stuff there on that floor. Yeah, ideal for experimenting. We can see what the difference will be by extending the flame path. Yeah, and you can see that we were getting some mighty good temperatures. I don't think you'll be able to see in that sun. Let me just move this. This here is a bit of rosemary tile, which is red. Yeah, roof tile. So we're getting temperatures because it started to melt. But yeah, the temperatures are only in certain places. So it's just all, and of course it's gone bright blue, like really strong waterproof engineering bricks. So we were getting mega temperature in some places and not in the others. I don't think it's a specific fault. I think it's very common. So there you go. Yeah, we're modifying. The main thing that with projects that I realise is, if you get a failure on a project, it's a bit devastating, but you've got to move forward, and the way to move forward is to talk to a few people, have a natter, see what somebody else thinks, and then devise a plan. So once you've got a way to move forward, then things don't look so desperate. And this is a way forward, and the logic says extend the flame path to keep the heat in the kiln for a lot longer. And if the heat builds up, that's grand. And this is the next batch of clay. We're sort of getting there. Yeah. It's a little bit sticky inside still. But this is 6 kilos, so it's got 75 grams worth of sifted sand in it. I shall be using a bit of this for sealing the kiln up on the next firing. There you go, a little bit sticky still. And of course this is home produced clay, wild clay, whatever you want to call it. And if you've not seen how I produce this, I'll put a link to the video describing the 2 processes at the end of this video. And then the other thing that I did was I went in the stores and found some bits of fiberglass insulation. So I wrapped the front here in insulation, and when the top was on, I put loads of fiberglass insulation on top of that, and that seemed to make a huge difference. As you can see, the heat came through. That's on the underside, so it's all gone white, but of course on the outside it's remaining this sort of yellowy colour, so it's retaining the heat and keeping it in there. There you go, that's just a bit of an update. I do like that dead rural way of locking the chimney damper in place. So I just screwed the piece of wood there, and then suddenly it was like, well, that's it, I don't need to do any more. I might re-engineer it at some point, but actually I don't think there's any need until I want to put a wall on that side, and then of course that stick will be in the way, and then we'll have to do some jiggery pokery, as it were. I think we need sides on this, but it's just great that we've got a roof. And of course it costs nothing, because it's materials that I've scavenged over the years and just put them in stock.